Fantastic. We are back with Lunch with Lunsford after a summer hiatus, and I'm so happy that all of you could join us today. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, Mark and I are going to chit chat for a few minutes and allow some folks to trickle in so no one misses anything important. In the meantime, I'm Sarah Schofield-Manser. I'm the Assistant Director of Special Events and Partnerships at the A.R.T, and I take she series pronouns.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Mark.
Welcome, everyone. So excited to be on with you again. My name is Mark Lunsford. I'm the artistic producer here at the A.R.T, and I take he, him pronouns. And I also just want to start with a land acknowledgement for Oberon and the Loeb Drama Center, our performance venues at A.R.T, which sit on the traditional and unceded territory of the Massachusetts people. Lunch with Lunsford returned.
Back.
You know, it's been so long, and yet it seems like it was just yesterday.
I could not agree more. I hope your summer was fantastic. I hope everyone watching had a lovely summer as well, considering the circumstances.
Yeah, I got to spend a couple days in Providence, socially distant, in Sarah's backyard with her and her husband Nick, and catch up
confirm.
with
Confirm.
So yeah, we're excited to be back. We've got some really exciting guests lined up coming here in the next few weeks. We're going to be talking to Harold Stewart from the Theater Offensive. We're going to be talking to Michael Bobbitt from New Rep. And we're also going to be having a conversation with Chanel De Silva, our friend and choreographer who collaborated with us on Black Clown and Moby Dick.
Yes.
So action-packed.
Watch this space every Tuesday at 12 p.m.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Sarah, because we will be here every Tuesday at noon. One thing to note, though, is, you know, as we're getting into this new semester in the time of COVID, we will be pre-recording a couple of the sessions. So we sadly won't always be with you live, but some of our guests will be spending some time with Sarah and I at different hours, so you might get a different lighting look in our living rooms. Who knows?
Trying to keep it fresh.
Keep it fresh. But we will be pre-recording some sessions for some of our friends that, you know, we really want to be in conversation with, but who are teaching at noon or have some other obligations at noon that don't allow them to be here with us live. So we'll be looking to that. We'll you know, ask in advance for some questions, and you'll see some of that information coming in the post-show email after the conversation today.
Absolutely.
Great. We're also going to have some guest hosts, which I'm excited about.
I am as well.
I think everyone gets tired of hearing me drone on and on. So we'll have some guests joining me for some conversations. I might not even be at every conversation. Who knows? We'll kind of play by ear and see what folks we have joining us for conversations each week.
Again, keeping it fresh.
All right, Sarah, we're up to 125. Feeling
we are.
Good.
So I feel like this is my time to sign off. So
yeah,
it was really lovely to virtually see all of you again, and I'm looking forward to another fantastic series of Lunches with Lunsford.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So here we are returning. I'm very excited to be back with you all, as I said. And we're thinking about sort of the best way to come back and to come back and be in conversation with all of you. And it seemed that we should really spend some time talking about what we've been up to at A.R.T over the summer, and also give you a preview of kind of what we're planning for the fall and for some of our programming selections coming up for this fall, which is really exciting. So I thought, who better to be in conversation with on that than our artistic director, Diane Paulus, and our executive producer, Diane Borger. So I'd like to invite both of them to join me in the lunch room right now. There they are.
Hi.
Hi, Diane. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Diane Paulus. I am the Terrie and Bradley Bloom Artistic Director. I take she pronouns.
I'm Diane Borger. I'm the executive producer at A.R.T, and I also use she pronouns.
And Diane Borger is coming to us from the Loeb, always giving us a good sense of home.
Yeah, following every single protocol for health and safety. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you both so much for joining me today and starting off this conversation, this new chapter in the sort of Lunch with Lunsford series. And we, as an institution, are faced right now with really two pandemics, two public health crises. Of course, the COVID pandemic, which we've all been talking about in so many ways in terms of health and safety and sort of how we can function as a cultural institution at a time when we can't bring our audiences together in the same physical space. And that's been such a big conversation. But we're also facing the long overdue conversation around the pandemic of anti-Blackness and racism in this country. As a nation, we're having that conversation, but more specifically in the cultural sector and in the theater industry, we're looking at that very specifically on every institution's practice, including our own. And so I thought we really, in order to start looking forward, we really need to start with looking at the summer and where A.R.T. has been in that reckoning that, as I mentioned, is overdue and long coming. So Diane Paulus, I don't know if you want to sort of start us there, just to give us a sense of what the last 3 months have looked like and where we're headed.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think we've all been living day to day in this massive disruption of business as usual. And a little bit later, we'll speak about what that means for how we tick as a theater in terms of our traditional activities of theater producing and how we're trying to pivot from that in this moment to stay engaged with our audience and our creativity. But I think, as you say, Mark, this reckoning that America is going through, dealing with our country's legacy of slavery and anti-Blackness, and how this has been exposed, right? It's nothing new, but it's been exposed through this pandemic, and how this has really hit the cultural sector. And I think we're thinking deeply institutionally about this, but I do want to start by saying there is also a personal journey I think that people are going through. I know for me, the last few months in the summer and feels like every day as we continue forward, I have been looking inwards personally, thinking about my own experience, my own, how I've showed up, my own shortcomings, my own failings. I think in particular in relation to the Griffin Matthews video that came out early in June. And Griffin was a performer that I had worked with, a performer, author, creator of Witness Uganda at the A.R.T. And that show went on to New York City at the Second Stage Theater, and Griffin spoke about his experience in New York when it was called Invisible Thread, and how he had experienced racism as part of the whole endeavor of putting on the show. And I was at the helm of that production. So I think for me to really deeply listen, to take that in, to have my own personal self-reflection and reckoning, and thinking about, among many things, what it means to be complicit with a system that normalizes racial inequity, and how we have to be actively anti-racist in order to address that. So that's something I've been thinking about, actively pursuing anti-racism as a director, as a creator, in a rehearsal room, in a casting process, in my relation with actors. And I think that's really extended this past summer to our staff at A.R.T. And we did also receive, as many theaters have, calls to actions from our own employees, our own Black, Indigenous, people of color employees, through an affinity group that we have at A.R.T. And there was a statement about all the ways in which A.R.T. Has not done the job that we should be doing to protect and champion and affirm the protection of our BIPOC employees. So I think that call to action which ended with this kind of charge to the theater, like how can we be a leader in racial justice in America? That we are a theater with a visibility, with a privileged position at Harvard University. How can we take this moment and loudly affirm our commitments to change? And I'll mention one other context, and then Diane, would love you to jump in, but this is all happening amidst, as you said, Mark, an industry-wide reckoning. And folks may be aware of the We See You White American Theater collective of BIPOC artists who really challenged the entire theater industry with ways in which we have failed to protect, to support, to affirm BIPOC artists, staff, and how we must actively change. And so that letter was followed up in early July with a 30-page incredible document of demands to the community that really articulated everything from issues of policy, hiring practice, priorities that theaters need to be making, commitments change, behavioral change, cultural change, policy change. And this collective has addressed not only theaters like the A.R.T. and the not-for-profit sector, but they've all extended these demands to the entire industry. So we're talking about regional theaters, New York City theaters, Broadway theaters, commercial theaters, casting offices, and also pedagogical institutions, of which we are also, part of that. So I think it's been an incredible summer where this pandemic, which has caused so much pain and suffering, has actually given, I think, the theater this chance to change, right? And so the conversation has been, when we come back, things can't be the same. So I think we took that to heart at A.R.T. I don't know, Diane, if you want to speak a little bit about any of those kind of calls to action, and then we can speak about how that's really generated a reflection internally at the A.R.T.
Yeah, and I think Diane expressed it very clearly and very well. Thank you. I think that the BIPOC demands that Diane referenced, which were put out in July, have been a very helpful set of guidelines, and each department at ART is working through that in particular. And over the past summer, because our staff is still with us, no one's on furlough, we have used that time to reflect and to investigate and to spend more time together. And a couple of the things that Diane and I are going to talk about in a minute are the action steps that we have begun and how we've arrived at those. But I think that the most important thing is it's been a period of listening and reflection, and now it's a period of action, and we've given ourselves some deadlines. One of the things in the BIPOC demands for theater was to set a timeline. So if you follow us on social media, you know that we have said that we will publish a more specific, although initial, set of guidelines by the 16th of November. And then we will give quarterly updates ever after, because we know this is sustained work. It will become foundational to our theater. It is becoming foundational. And we also know that there's not an end in sight to it. So I think that Diane and I have made our personal commitment to this. I don't mean to speak for you, but I think I can in that instance. And I think that ART has, and we actively want to be held accountable, which is why we will give ourselves these timelines and benchmarks and things like that going forward.
I think, you know, something you said, Diane, is so important, that this is work that will be foundational to the theater, and that will continue, right? And in our own BIPOC affinity group later from the A.R.T, it was really clear, you know, do not think about this as a checklist, right? So we're not checking off anti-racist training, even though we'll be doing that. It's not like we're checking off things. This is a commitment to a process. It's a commitment to a value of anti-racism, and that will be a guiding principle for our theater moving forward. And I just want to underscore the time that we were able to spend this summer as a staff. Normally, you know, we're for those folks that know us, we're running 100 miles an hour. We're producing shows. We're you know, all hands on deck. You know, the show must go on, and the opportunity to be as together as we can be, right? It's all through Zoom because we can't be together, but the opportunity to spend weekly time, multiple hours every week in a company meeting with over 90 people, to really start to have a conversation and to break down silos, to try to create feedback loops so that we are breaking down a sense of hierarchy. You know, how can we work across departmental divisions? How can we address issues and address experiences that staff have had? I think we're at the beginning of this journey, but it's certainly been a different experience. I mean, for me as artistic director, I'm usually in the rehearsal hall.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to spend this much time with staff is really different and welcome and necessary. And one thing I want to highlight, we felt and evaluated that we really did need some outside expertise and help in really looking at the anti-racism work, how we would approach training, how would we approach policy change. So we decided we would seek a consultant and someone to help us. And I just want to underscore the process to get to that decision was really new for us at A.R.T. We put together a committee of folks that involved certain members from our executive team, but not all, just a few, a handful, balanced by staff from across the institution, centering BIPOC staff, Black and Indigenous people of color staff. And we also included board representation from our board of trustees and our board of advisors, and as well, we integrated the voices of outside external stakeholders, so incorporating the presence of Chanel De Silva, actually, who's going to be coming on to Lunch with Lunsford later, an outside artist who's been engaged with us, and Bethany Allen, someone from outside A.R.T. who's been deeply involved with A.R.T. through our community partners work. She had been a facilitator on the White Card, and Anna DeBeer Smith knows from the field. So that felt really different to have a large group that was sanctioned with decision-making power. So it was a non-hierarchical collective organization put together with a commitment to consensus.
Well, I'll offer to that too, Diane. I think what was so exciting about that and this company time in general is getting to interact with some staff that we don't always interact with, to your point about de-siloing, right? Getting to be in conversation with teams that maybe our routine work doesn't really intersect with as much. But then also just seeing the sort of resounding commitment of the staff at A.R.T. to like really jumping in and digging in to the work that needs to be done, I thought was so exciting this summer, you know, spending that time and really observing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. To see everyone's willingness to go on this process, understanding that being uncomfortable is part of what it will require, right? Just to finish that loop, we did achieve consensus in someone to come and work with us, and we're thrilled. incredible force. Lisa Yancey of Yancey Consulting is going to be working with us. And so that work, we just had our first meeting last week. So that will be a partnership with Yancey Consulting. And I love Lisa's mission, which is about transformation. So I think we're looking at this moment, just to come full circle to your question about what we've been up to this summer, is really looking at this moment as an opportunity for transformation and change. And we know it will be long, and we have to be patient, and we have to endure it and welcome it, and continue to listen and approach everything through a mindset of continual learning and growth.
Yeah, Diane, I wonder, Diane, you'd mentioned the action steps as we were chatting. And for those of you who are tuning in and maybe haven't had a chance to see those, they are both on our website and on our social channels. So if you haven't had a chance to see those, you can find them in both those areas. And you know, we I don't think have enough time to sort of step through all of those action steps right now, because there's a lot there to discuss. But I just wonder if the two of you can talk a little bit about your process with the staff and hearing a lot of what the staff was offering in the conversations, and also with everything that you've mentioned, Diane, Griffin's video, the POC affinity statement, the We See You Collective, kind of where that set for the two of you in thinking about these action steps, and sort of what things started to arise as you were making that, and what are some highlights in those action steps that you're really excited about?
I'll go first, and you can say the highlights. I think that Diane and I wrote them together. You'll remember at one point there were about 20 action steps, and what we've put up now, I think, is just 7 or 8. But we thought a lot about, as Diane said, our own personal reckonings, our own complicity in certain things, and we wrote what we felt were important action steps, and then we shared them with the company. We had an enormous amount of time in a larger group, then in smaller groups, and we keep going back to it and keep checking in that we are not imposing these in any way, and that they reflect the views of the company. I think that one of the important ones for me is we talked about articulating our values. And so we used slightly the same process. Oh, wait, before I say that, I need to give full credit to Mark for leading what I don't know its official name, but the synthesis group. But because when you have a staff of 90 people and you're seeking feedback, we received a wonderful amount, in the sense that people, to echo Mark, are so committed that they wanted to give feedback, and Mark and a team who all self-selected, so they're clearly data people, did the most wonderful job of putting it all together for us, of finding what themes resonated most with the company, of what were the priorities, because when you start, it can feel daunting because there's a lot of things you want to fix or get right or lean into, and that work was unbelievably helpful. But one of the things that became obvious to us very quickly is that we should look at what our values were. And so again, Diane and I wrote what we think the values of ART are, and again went back into the process of large groups, small breakout groups, shared them with our board of trustees as well, but those very, very initial conversations are just beginning. And once again, Mark's group synthesized. And so that's one of the things that we'll be working on getting out very soon, is the values that ART stands for, and that we will include anti-racism as one of our core values, but it's something that we will ask everyone to uphold when they're part of ART. So for me, that's one of the highlights, is the process of articulating our values through a collaborative process.
And I think, just to tag on to that, the idea that These are initial steps, initial action steps and commitments that they'll continue to be updated as departments at ART meet, as we discuss ways in which we can actually integrate these kind of ideas into our policy and our structure. I think this initial set of actions and commitments really wanted to emphasize transparency and process, time spent as a company, time spent, intentional time to listening across the traditional departments and silos, as we've said. Also a really important commitment to support our BIPOC employees throughout the process, and lifting that and naming that and acknowledging that and supporting that. I think more specifics to come. And I think, as Diane just said, we're starting very internal with our staff, but ultimately we are an outward facing institution that brings in many folks, right? Artists, our partners, our partners at Harvard University, our partners in community, and our audience ultimately. So I think things like really being clear in our articulation of our values, right? So we had a sense of our values internally. We've had an EDI statement like most theaters, but really what are our values that we can articulate, share, make public, and invite everyone to uphold with us, and how we can, as a community, grow and change, and really stand for a transformative future that I think we're hoping ART can be part of and be a catalyst for. So again, just underscoring, this is a long process, and we're at our beginning steps of the journey.
Yeah, it's forever work, right? I think just this is a time for everyone to just plug that there is a Q&A function. So if you've got questions, we are going to try to save at least the last 10 minutes or so to answer some of your questions. And then Sarah's also, our great manager, Sarah, is hard at work behind the scenes. So if you pop some questions in there that she can answer for you, she'll sort of type some responses and stay in touch. But we do have one question here that I think applies to this that I'll just go ahead and throw out now. And then we'll sort of move on into some other conversation. But we've had a question about how the boards will be involved going forward. And you've touched on that a little bit, but the boards have been involved in this conversation too over the summer, and sort of breaking out to look at the action steps and the values. And I wonder if you can just touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we have two boards at ART, a board of advisor group and a board of trustees. And, we've articulated, Diane and I, as well as the chair of our board of trustees, Andy Ori, how board involvement in this work is critical and necessary. I think we've had, as you said, Mark, conversations through the summer about this, but the work is really ahead of us with the boards. So we're very excited to be in partnership with Lisa Yancey, our consultant, to really help us craft a process. Again, it's all about process. It's a word that we use a lot in the theater, right? It's the process, not the product. Even though we're making product all the time, we know that good process is so critical. And I think that's a value that we really work on at ART, is how do we make the right process, and how can we make a better process moving forward. So that's something I think we're thinking very closely about, is how can we invite the boards into this conversation in a way that will be necessary and full and rigorous. So I think that will be one of our top priorities this fall.
Great. Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about that has become a really sort of central part of the work we've been doing, particularly since the COVID pandemic sort of forced us into our at-home work, and something that is named in the ART POC affinity statement, right? That as we approach the work on anti-racism and center that into the organization, that also has to be a major part of the public health conversation that we have undertaken as an institution. And very specifically, this statement calls for us to center that in the roadmap to recovery and resilience for the theater. And I know since the roadmap has debuted, and for those of you who don't know, you can also check that out on our website to see the most recent published version. But we've yet, some of the science has evolved on COVID, and so we've issued a new draft sort of with updates based on what we're learning, right? And then we're also centering the anti-racism work in that document as well. And so I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the roadmap, that collaboration with the Chan School for Public Health and with Joe Allen's Healthy Building Initiative team with this group.
Yeah, for sure. Creating the roadmap for recovery and resilience for theater has felt like a production because it is such a collaborative endeavor, as you say, Mark, with the Chan School, in particular with Professor Joe Allen, who folks may be aware of. I think he's regularly in the news, whether it's the Washington Post or CNN or CBS News.
I'll see him on Morning Joe, and then I'm in a meeting.
He's very involved in protocols to get K through 12 schools, considerations of how those schools can get back to in-person teaching. So Joe, we call him Joe, we got to know over the years prior to this pandemic because he's the director of the Healthy Buildings program at the Chan School. And we had invited Joe to be in conversation with our architects and our design team around our new building project in Alston. All conceptual work, all very early kind of charrettes around our ambitions for that building and how could we create a arts center for research and performance that was not only a green building, because we're very aware of the green building movement, but how could we make it a exemplar of a healthy building? And at the time when I first met Joe, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a healthy building. Of course, once the pandemic hit, I think we're all very, the idea of healthy building is much more in our zeitgeist, right? Because we're talking about what it means to be indoors, what are the protocols for best practice in terms of ventilation and air circulation, which become triple underlined during a pandemic that is now proven to be airborne. So Joe and his team have been incredible in putting together this roadmap. It had guiding principles. Again, in a similar way, it really wasn't as much a checklist kind of document of here's your safety protocol handbook that you can just kind of print out as a PDF and apply. It was more, here are the questions you need to ask. Here are the things you have to think about. Here are the guiding principles. And equity and anti-discrimination, that was a guiding principle. But I think we moved very much in reaction to our own BIPOC affinity group letter saying this anti-racism should be part of, there's no recovery without dealing with this public health crisis, which is racism in America. So we've incorporated that into the roadmap, as you say. And the roadmap overall is really, I think, a demonstration of how we're thinking about our work and our resources at A.R.T. What do we have uniquely at our disposal that we can harness and share with the field? So the idea that we could build this roadmap, put it online on our website, get it out to theaters across America, to organizations, to high school theater departments that are thinking, can we ever do a play again? How are ways in which we can share a very unique situation of a professional theater being this closely affiliated to a school of public health? And I just want to really credit Joe. He loves the A.R.T, really appreciates the arts, but he said there's no recovery without the arts. And to hear that come out of the mouth of an exposure risk mitigation scientist was really encouraging. And one thing I want to just amplify that he did, he talked about the necessity of education in this moment for people to really understand why there's so many protocols. I think we're bombarded with, you have to wear your mask, you have to do this, you have to do this. And we don't always understand the underlying science of why it's so necessary to comply to these things. So we've done, as part of our company time, right, as part of this commitment to spend more time as a company, Joe led 3 educational forums for our full staff on basic science, on healthy building strategy, on social responsibility, on the disease itself. And we're hoping there's going to be a way we can share this idea of educational forum and scale that so that this can be part of what it means to come back. And certainly that will extend to a really robust dialogue with our audience community when we're ready to reopen, so that audiences understand the reason behind all the necessary measures, and what it means to be in a socially responsible kind of social pact of trust around ensuring everyone's mutual safety and health.
Sadly, we're not in the position to say when we can
I
reopen.
was going to say, maybe that's a good moment to pivot to what we're doing in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking a lot about what does artistic programming look like, right, in the fall, and to the point that Diane Borger just made, not being able to gather and not being able to have our audiences in a traditional way, and not even really wanting to attempt that in any way that would compromise folks' safety, which I think has been a pretty big center conversation for us, right, as we think about how to engage and how to offer programming and to do it safely and provide artists with work and really sort of center on what we do as theater makers. So Diane, I know there's a big sort of exciting program coming up in conjunction with 1776, and then I would love to talk a little bit about what we're up to at Oberon.
Yes. So I think just to be clear to all the folks out there listening, as you all are aware, there's such a difference of experience based on where you are geographically in America, and the number one thing that anybody like a theater needs to be mindful of is the disease dynamics and the particular regulations coming not only from your state but your city, and in our case from Harvard University. So we are following all of those requirements. So we are not able to gather or reopen, and that's those are rules we're following. We're eagerly watching theater coming back in other parts of the world. We have an artist that has worked with us, Sammy Knold, who's was the director of Violet, if people remember that. She's actually, as we speak, in Seoul in South Korea, making a documentary film there. So we've been in conversation with her about her experience there and what she's learning. As you may have read in the news, theater is open in Seoul in South Korea. So there are glimmers of hope on the horizon, but we're just not there yet. We are hoping that by the late spring, we can be back in production, and we are hoping that will be the time will coincide, and we'll be able to bring you our production of 1776, which was supposed to be at A.R.T. this past June, July, and it would be currently on a 13-city national tour. So happy to say that that entire tour has rebooked, and it has a home at the Roundabout. After the tour, we're kind of looking at, if this all goes well, 1 year later, picking up the original plan. But as you say, in the meantime, we have stayed in close touch with the creative team, with the artists, with the cast, and we were invited to participate in an event called Transformation 2020, which is a 3-day virtual conference. I think the subtitle is Popular Democracy Defined, and it's being led by the Center for Popular Democracy in combination with a number of support organizations. It was really, I think, an attempt to create an alternative conference to the DNC or the RNC as an opportunity to engage folks, especially young folks, in what it means to be civically engaged. So lots of panel discussions, educational sessions, toolkits that people can take away to motivate people at this very important moment around this election season we're in, right? Coming to November 3rd. Level Forward, which is a impact-minded entertainment company, was asked to organize the arts portion of it and invited 1776 to be part of this. So we have been spending the last several weeks taking some of the music from the show and creating, filming, recording, all done virtually, some videos of music from the show, and a new version of a song that we're going to debut at this conference. We also put together a roundtable discussion with 4 of our cast members and my co-director and choreographer, Jeffrey Page, and our 2 incredible historians at Harvard University, Professor Vince Brown and Professor Tim McCarthy, who've been involved with the production. They participated in a Zoom workshop we had in early April and spoke to the cast about what the history means, what 1776 even meant back in its historical context, and all the resonance to the moment we're living in. So we kind of had a reunion of cast with these 2 historians. We had this last week. We recorded it. Now we're editing it and kind of making this what we hope will be a hybrid form of conversation, multimedia, performance that will be aired and screened as part of this conference. So again, it's not a production in a room with human beings, but it's creative, it's collaborative, it's really harnessing A.R.T's commitment to civic engagement. And I know that Sarah will put in the chat a way for folks, if you're interested, you can register for the conference and see our offering. It's Friday, September 25th. It's a 3-day conference if you're interested. It should be a fascinating program. But you could view our contribution on the Friday the 25th, I think at noon. So more information for anyone interested to participate in that.
Yeah, I think Sarah will also have that for us in the post-show email. So if folks just check your email after today, she'll have information on that for us moving forward.
But let's talk about Oberon, because while we can't invite people into the venue, I know, Mark, you really led the thinking about how can we share that resource, and we have some ideas cooking there that we want to share.
Yeah, I mean, I love to talk about Oberon. I don't know many folks who know, but when I started A.R.T. a little over 9 years ago, I actually bartended at Oberon for a while, which I, miss every day. It's one of my favorite job duties at A.R.T. No, we've been having a lot of conversations about, the long work that we've had with a lot of our local artists and local collaborators in that space, and some of the amazing performances they've been able to put together in that immersive club environment, right? I feel like so many local artists, when Oberon came into the mix, really took it and ran with it and started to create a lot of exciting things. And one of the big exciting pieces of Oberon for me is that it really breaks genre a lot. Like, it's not theater necessarily. It really ranges in performance, which is exciting. So all that being said, we spent a lot of time thinking, we've got this space that is this very sophisticated theatrical space with a lot of resources to offer. Is there a way we can do that safely? And also seeing a lot of our local partners making a lot of really great work in their living rooms, in their bedrooms, trying to get out new music, get out new
yes.
Yeah, all this virtual work from their homes, rigging lamps and doing all kinds of stuff to create in that time. So a lot of folks at A.R.T, a lot of folks on staff in collaboration with the Roadmap have been working with different offices at Harvard to put together a really rigorous safety protocol, so that we can invite in some artists and our technical staff to start to make some work inside Oberon. Obviously without a live audience. It'll be a very slim crew, so that we can make sure it's safe and everyone can properly socially distance and do their work. But we are still working on a title. I've been calling it sort of Live at Oberon, not a great title. We actually just had a staff briefing where the staff offered many titles that are much better than what I could come up with. So stay tuned.
I like virtually live at Oberon.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yes.
So we've been working with some artists, a couple that I can talk about that are going to come through Oompa, a local hip hop artist and poet and just all around curator of amazing things in Boston, is going to be with us for a performance. We're also, this is the time we would be ramping up for Cirque of the Dead, the big Boston Circus Guild Halloween extravaganza, usually. We're not going to be able to do that this year, of course, but we're talking to the Boston Circus Guild about a collaboration in the space, which I think will be really exciting. Also, kind of pursuant to that, so we'll be producing those new pieces that will be streamed virtually, no live audience. But then we also have some archival offerings that we want to share and get out. One of which, we're still working to figure it all out. There's a lot of complications to airing archival footage, but many know our dear friend Sarah Porkalob and the amazing work that she's done on the Dragon cycle, both Dragon Lady, her second piece, Dragon Mama, and then we've commissioned Dragon Baby, which is the third piece in the cycle. But we're gonna hopefully air the archival of Dragon Mama for folks to see. And we've been having some really great conversations about complementary programming to that sharing that will be coming, so stay tuned for what's coming there. And we've been in such deep relationship with Sarah for a long time. She actually just signed on with our education engagement team to participate in the Harvard Global Day of Service, which is this program for first-year Harvard students to really activate them around community service and understanding sort of Cambridge and the greater Boston area. And so Sarah's going to lead a workshop as part of that for first-year students about storytelling, activism, and how to sort of use tools as an activist and storyteller to dismantle white supremacy. So that's going to be very exciting. Open to Harvard first-year students coming up here this coming weekend. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Oh my gosh.
I know Diane has to just talk about our family programming, because
I know, I was going to say
about families and kids, and we have two really great offerings coming.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if any of you know anything about our A.R.T. Kids Company. This is actually its 10th year. It's a program that we offer on Saturdays. There's 3 groups, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, and 11 to 13. And it's offered both in the autumn and in the spring. And enrollment is now open if anyone's interested in looking on the website for it. But what it's done historically, it's worked with people of the ages I've just said about ensemble building, playwriting, kind of creative playmaking. And they use as the basis of their work an A.R.T. production. So in the autumn, it's always whatever our holiday show is going to be. And then in the spring, it often has a different theme. This year, the big reveal, our holiday show is going to be Jack and the Beanstalk. And it's been written by Julia Ryu and Ian Chan, who wrote Thumbelina last year. They're both amazingly talented Harvard undergraduates, who I'm sure will be scooped up immediately by Disney when they leave. And we, instead of waiting to offer it that week at the end of the year, this year we will have this out by Thanksgiving. So keep an eye out for it. But we don't quite know its form yet because there's so many interesting opportunities, but we have an idea that this year we'll do a 20-minute version for sure for maybe 3-4-year-olds. And then we'll do another version maybe that's a bit longer for the whole family to watch. And I just want to thank both Emma Watt and Brenna Nicely for the work they're doing on Kids Company and Thumbelina and bringing it to be. I know we don't have very much time left if we want to have questions. Diane, are you going to talk about archivals? Because I think that's a big question.
I think 2 other things that we're up to, where, as Mark said, there's a lot of red tape to get through with screening archives.
Yeah.
But we are hoping to be able to bring some archives out of the library and to share with our audience. So stay tuned for more details on some productions that we're looking into. And as well, I just wanted to say, we're really committed to conversations and engagement and continued learning. So folks may be aware of the 1776 Salon series for last spring. So that's starting again this fall. A speaker series around the topic of America and democracy. So that will be announced shortly. Our first speaker is Maxine Isaacs, who is a lecturer at the Kennedy School. I believe that event is October 5th. And her specialty is electoral politics. So she's going to be discussing the Electoral College and its influence on presidential elections from 1960 to 2020. So really timely conversation with this scholar, and there'll be others to follow. We're also really excited to be hosting a conversation with Claudia Rankin, who folks may remember from The White Card. She is the poet who wrote Citizen, that was turned into The White Card as a play. She's an artist very near and dear to our A.R.T. family, and she has a new book actually coming out today called Just Us. So you might be seeing it in the press in sorts today. It's a collection of poems and essays and images, all about how do we stay in conversation with each other in this divisive moment in America. And it's an incredible collection. And she will be joining us for a discussion about her new book and you know, her thoughts as an artist. That will be coming in October. So again, we'll be continuing to offer a whole selection of ways in which our audience, our community, our family can stay engaged virtually with all these topics that are important to the A.R.T.
The idea is that I think it's next week is our goal, is that we will get all of this up on the website, all of the information out to you. Some old favorites like Resistance Mike will be back. Probably we have, just to firm up the dates for that, we're trying to think this is the time of year we would normally have Run Amok. I'm in conversation with those artists. So we know it's all virtual and it's nothing like all of us being able to be gathered, but we want to continue the work. So that's
yeah,
us.
and lean into the opportunities, right? I think that's what a lot of this program is exciting, is that it's a challenge and an opportunity to reinvestigate our practice and what are the new things we can do. I think that's we're kind of on all fronts, producing things, sharing things from our history, being in conversation, just our job as storytellers, right? Like, how do we tell a story now? It's just a different frame, which I think is exciting. There are lots of questions.
Okay.
So with your permission, I'd love to hear a bit. So the first one, we touched on this a little bit, but we could revisit back to the anti-racism work. We have a question: how are we involving our patrons or thinking about the patron experience in the anti-racism and anti-Black work, anti-Blackness work?
For sure, our patrons, our audience, our community, that as we know at A.R.T, we talk about making theater in partnership with an audience. So our patrons, our audience are a key part of how we think about what we do at A.R.T. So that is 100% part of the journey ahead. I think, as we said earlier, we started internally with staff, thinking about all the different groups and all the different communities that we need to bring this work to. So probably it will be virtual at first, but you know, the idea of when we can be in person again and how we can have trainings, anti-racist workshops offered to audience is all part of you know, the road ahead and the commitment that we're making as a theater.
Great. There are two separate questions here that I'm going to kind of merge, and my apologies to the questioners if I get these kind of wrong, but we have any idea now if there'll be any changes to the planning for the new facility that might be affected by the anti-racism work? And then similarly, sort of moving into a new neighborhood and the sort of racist overtones about gentrification and what that means for people of color very specifically. And so what is the A.R.T plan in terms of building community and about sort of A.R.T having the privilege of Harvard and the benefiting from that movement to Austin and Brighton?
Diane, do you want to jump into
I,
that?
I, I will take a little sort of start to answer it, I hope. I actually think we should either have a whole lunch with Lunsford about it or some
Yeah.
other forum to talk about, because it's so important and it's such a good question. It has started to inform our conversations with the first part of the question, as it were, with the designers and the way we're thinking about it. I think that even though it feels a bit extended, we're still in the concept stage. So we had already begun thinking specifically about the building in terms of COVID. And then when the second pandemic, as Mark referred to it, hit, we altered the course of our conversations. I feel that we are mindful of them, but and have started them, but we're not even pretending to be anywhere near a solution or grasping that. We haven't gone out to the community yet, which I think is key, but I think that we started again with the internal work, and those will be coming. I long for nothing more than to be able to get into a focus group with the community and start to talk about what it means, but I hope we're not giving away state secrets. It's always been envisioned not as a culture palace, but as a building for the community. And it's, I hope, surprising in some ways, but it's always been in Diane and mine's, I guess, vision for the building, that it would not be a traditional theater. And then what's happened has just amplified that feeling. But I think it's worth a lot of conversation.
Yeah, and I just want to say that the architectural field has also, just like the cultural sector, had its own reckoning of its practices and its values, and how to really analyze choices made architecturally through the lens of anti-racism. So this was, a conversation that, again, virtually with our architect partners, Haywood Tompkins and Choco Blue, they were 100% on board for really incorporating what we're all reckoning with in this moment into the building project. And I just wanted to say that, we are at an amazing moment of concept development still. So there's an opportunity with this project to embrace what we're learning and pivot the project to really be the best expression it can be, not only in our goals of green building, healthy building, but certainly public health. And as we've said in this hour, with addressing anti-racism as a central, central cornerstone to what it means to center public health in America.
Great. I want to offer as well, many smaller theaters, especially repertory, will likely not survive the pandemic. How is A.R.T, also connecting our support of Harvard, thinking about the survival of the art form, particularly in America during this time?
I think we're pausing, because I think every time we think about the survival of the art form, it kind of takes your breath away. I have always felt in my heart that as an art form, the theater will find its resilience. There'll be changes for sure, changes and welcome changes, and then new changes, technological changes. I think the speed with which we've adapted to technology is going to have an impact on the theater. So I think the form will go through a change, and I think it will be very connected to values and what theaters are prioritizing. I think we're going to be looking at how theaters survive financially, because there's no question this is a stress, as it is a stress on so many industries, all the industries that are based on live presence of folks, right? Not just live virtually or live, through technology, but literally live and being together in the same space, right? So we fall into that sector. And we have been hit. The theater industry in that sense has been decimated in many ways. So how we come out of this, how we join forces, how we share resources, how we think about community, how we think about our ecosystem in the greater Boston area is really on our minds, of how we can support, you know, this sector, which must be part of the human condition and survival. It's, you know, I've always said, especially coming out of this pandemic, like,
Yeah.
we're going to need the arts. We're going to need the arts to tell the stories, to help us feel and think and contemplate and kind of go through a catharsis, like ritually, of what we've been through, right? So without the arts to help us minister to us about what we've all been through collectively, and yet individually so alone, right? Is I can't think of any form that is more suited to delivering that service, which we're going to need as a society.
It's 101, if you can believe it. This time just flies. Folks, I tried to get to some of your, if you saw my eyes darting, I was listening to Diane, but also trying to answer some of your questions that I could, typing directly to you. So I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone, but tried to get to everyone that I could. Diane, thank you for taking this time today and chatting with me and sort of about what A.R.T has been up to, will be up to, and what our audience is going to expect coming up.
And thanks to everybody who's out there listening. Thank you for your continued belief in our theater and in the arts. It's now more important than ever. So really, really grateful for even your tuning in and spending an hour with us today.
Great. Yes, I echo all that. We'll be back next week, same time. Harold Stewart will join us. And my dear friend, Sophie Ansaval, line producer here at A.R.T, will be joining me in that conversation as well. So coming at you. Great.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.